Good morning. My name's Dave Harrell, and I'm a worship associate. And on behalf of the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, I welcome you to our online service. Today, we are joined by the Michael Foster Project from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who's performing outside the building of the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. And now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Today, as we light our chalice, we honor a dear friend, longtime member, and big supporter of First Unitarian, Peggy Rawheiser, who died peacefully on Friday, December 18th, at the age of 86, after a couple years of declining health. Peggy was devoted to her family and to her community. Her 5 children were in the First Unitarian Religious Education program over the years. Peggy herself was a staff member here at First Unitarian since the 1970s and for some years. Peggy raised her family with attention to detail in whatever capacity she applied her knowledge and skills. She guided with a firm hand and a gentle heart. Now, I knew of Peggy Rawheiser before I ever met her because of her deep commitment to this congregation and to its history. Her imprint seemed to be everywhere here at this church. When I finally did get to sit down and chat with her, I got to hear about her family's rich history in our Universalist faith. And also, I got to experience some very moving kindness toward me as a new minister here. Peggy is survived by her husband, Ralph, of 62 years, and their 5 children, David and his wife Sue, Debbie Robertson and her husband William, Rob and his wife Lori, Bill and his wife Cecilia, and Steve and his wife April. She is survived by 7 grandchildren and 1 great grandchild. And she is survived by brother Richard Ward and wife Lynn and sister Nancy Dunn. Ralph and Peggy were married on this day, December 27th, in 1958. And so on this day, which would have been their wedding anniversary, we light our chalice in gratitude for their marriage and their family, and with gratitude for the spark of love that Peggy brought into this world for her 86 years. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me as I light my home chalice. And now we say together the words of the mission of our community of faith. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Today is the last Sunday of the year. As we lay rest to 2020 and imagine a new 2021, our service this morning is inspired by the traditional New Orleans jazz funeral. This kind of funeral starts with feeling all the feelings of loss when someone you love dies. We start with the expression of grief and mourning. Then there's a funeral, a burial, and then a big joyful procession away from the cemetery. The procession away from the cemetery starts with the band and performers who are the first line. And then after them is the second line made up of anyone and everyone who wants to join in the procession, dancing and singing along behind the band. Everyone is welcome in this celebration of life. Today, we honor that tradition and invite you, no matter where you are, to fully participate in today's service. Please have nearby something to write with and paper to write on. There are a couple of things you should know about the New Orleans Jazz funeral. One is that it developed in the late 19th century among Black Creole people, which were people whose heritage was West African, Caribbean, French, Spanish, and or some other background. But Creole people were people who were born in Louisiana. New Orleans jazz funeral, like jazz itself, is a blend of different cultures like blues, Cajun, Zydeco, R&B, and rock. And we start with this jazz favorite referred to as the Saints.
So, this is a time in our service when we intentionally create a moment that speaks to people of all ages, whether you're a child or all grown up. And just a couple of months ago, we dedicated and recognized the youngest member of our first Unitarian community, Lachlan, who was born in late April. So, today, we are going to recognize the birthday of the eldest member of our congregation, Robert Ulrich, who was born on December 29th, 1920, which makes him about to turn 100 years old. Now, originally from Long Island, Bob has been living here for a long time here in Delaware and has been living at Cokesbury and Hockessin for more than 25 years. Retired from Hercules after 40 years of service, and way back when served in Germany during World War II. Before the death of his first wife, he raised a family with a marriage that lasted 66 years, 2 weeks, and 2 days. And he says that he has been very fortunate to have supportive and loving partners in his life, even through all the ups and downs. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to chat with Bob Ulrich and June Peterson about learnings and life. Bob shared this advice about the secret to making it into triple digits.
Well, genes.
Right.
Yeah, both of my parents lived into their 90s. which is almost if you don't encounter a disease, a life-threatening disease, having that kind of genetic background is a big help.
When asked for advice about growing older, Bob encouraged staying active physically and mentally, and he offered this advice for growing older.
Well, relax and let it happen, because
That's a good one.
yeah, it's there's nothing you can do about it. There are things you could do destructive, but to be constructive, just relax and try to try to be patient with all those people around you
Telling you what to do.
who haven't yet gained the wisdom that we have. Anyhow, it's been a good life, and I've enjoyed it.
Now, we had so hoped for a more in person way of celebrating Bob's 100th birthday. It's such a milestone year. But instead, what we'll have to do, since we're all safely at home, is one, you can send him a card using the address in our member directory. But also, I've asked a few of his friends to weigh in on their appreciation for Bob, and I'd like to share what they shared with me. Dale Stratton says, "What I appreciate about Bob is that after 100 years, he still embraces life with joy and enthusiasm." Marilyn Height says, "Bob is a gentleman's gentleman. He exudes the courtesy and etiquette of old world charm." Linda Sanders says, "I love Bob's smile and the twinkle in his eye. I see someone who has lived a life well and enjoyed his friends and family. I also love to see Bob and June together and how much they seem to care about one another." Leslie Dickerson says, "I like how open Bob is to all the things going on around him. I also am heartened by the joy and care Bob and June take in each other." Jenny Brown says, "Bob and June participated in my international dance class at Cokesbury. Bob always requested a couple's dance so that he could twirl June on the dance floor." Cindy Cohen says, "For many years, Bob was part of the Emmanuel dining room team and was one of our loyal servers. I could always count on Bob stepping up to help most months, and we loved having him be part of the fun. In fact, he only just retired his serving spoon last fall at 99 years young. It has not been the same in the EDR kitchen in that time, Bob. You are missed. The whole EDR team wishes you a happy 100th birthday." Steve Cohen notes that Bob is one of just a few World War II combat officers who are still alive. He was a second lieutenant promoted to first lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Bob was mentioned by name for raising the morale of the troops sailing across the Atlantic, where U-boats were still sinking ships. Lynn Ingersoll writes, "Bob Ingersoll and I had the pleasure of volunteering with Bob Ulrich at Emmanuel Dining Room. He was the favorite server, famous for heaping every plate high and handing it off with a grin. That seems to have been his recipe for life. Generous helpings garnished with love and joy, served with a grin, and best of all, shared with June." Sue Hodges writes, "Bob's ready smile always lights me up when I see him. His zest for life is an inspiration. He and June show us that love is ageless." J. Harry Feldman writes, "Bob Ulrich, especially faithful and generous while serving Emmanuel dining room guests. Always happy to greet him at church." Helen Foss shares, "My first response is the twinkle in Bob's eye that always fills me with joy, and his wonderful laugh. I love how he freely talks of the three women in his life, his wife of many years, Harriet, who died, and then Lois Osborne, the Cokesbury resident who won his heart until her death, and then our dear June. and he has enchanted us all with his care for her. Bob, we so wish we could be with you as you celebrate your 100th birthday. Know that we fully intend to get together when it is safe to do so and to celebrate big this milestone with you. In the meantime, we hope that you feel our love and our respect and our gratitude for you. As you celebrate your 100th birthday, know that we are celebrating with you and so grateful that you are part of our community. Happy birthday.
Parts of her service today were written by Reverend Melanie Morrill Insminger, a Unitarian minister from New Orleans. She writes, in New Orleans back in the day, on the night before a funeral was scheduled, a wake would be held where folks sat up all night with the deceased and sang familiar hymns. My father used to tell of wakes that were held in people's homes with the dearly departed laid out on the dining room table or on a door taken off its hinges, laid on two trestles. But as the 20th century wore on, increasingly such vigils were held in professional funeral parlors or in churches. Funeral director is a long honored profession among Black Creoles in New Orleans. Traditional gospel hymns were sung, such as What a Friend We Have in Jesus, Down by the Riverside, As I Lay My Burden Down, and Just a Little While to Stay Here. During the wake, friends and family would sit up all night with the coffin, not only singing, but remembering and sharing stories together. Sharing stories is healing and helps us deal with grief, which is why it's often a part of our Unitarian Universalist memorial services. In recalling and sharing stories, the burden of grief and memory is laid down, becoming not solely an individual problem, but something dealt with in community. Keeping pain inside is isolating. Sharing pain is both liberating and healing. Every year's ending brings with it the bittersweet task of remembering and evaluating the events of the past year. Every year has its moments of pain, its losses, and its evils. The past year brought changes both good and bad to our world, to our church, and to our personal lives. And for each one of us this year, there have been losses, pain, missed opportunities, accident of nature, triumphs, and tragedies. We all need to process and move through these changes, wounds, and losses in order to incorporate them into our lives in a healthy way. To begin again anew in the new year with new hearts. We all need to fully grieve our pain and our losses in order to be ready to face the unknown future. There is no shortcut through grief and pain. The only way through sadness is through sadness. The best way we know of as human beings to do this difficult work is in religious community. So we begin today with an assessment of 2020. What didn't get to happen this past year because of the pandemic? What moments of the past year do you regret? What do you wish to discard? What feelings or responses do you wish to bury? What happened to you individually or to us communally that you wish to deal with and lay to rest? Our lives are brief. We only have a little while to stay here. We should not carry emotional pain forever. What burdens are you willing to lay down? Write them down now.
After the wake was over, usually the next morning, the funeral itself would be held. The body would be reverently and tenderly laid in a coffin, and the coffin would be removed from the home or the funeral parlor and carried slowly with great dignity through the streets of the city to the church. In the old days, the hearse was horse-drawn, the horses plumed in black, their hooves muffled with black cloth, the attendants dressed in dark tailcoats. Nowadays, the hearse is usually a long motor car, and the attendants wear plain and sober business suits. The brass band follows behind in a slow lockstep, playing mournful dirges with the family and friends behind them, all moving slowly and sadly, doing what in New Orleans is called the slow drag in time with the music. The funeral would follow a traditional pattern. The dead would be eulogized, hymns sung, hope for a reunion in a better world would be expressed. After the funeral service in the church, the coffin would be carried through the streets to the neighborhood cemetery for burial, for it was the custom in those days for people to be buried near where they had lived. Even today in the old neighborhoods, it is not unusual for small cemeteries to be scattered throughout residential areas, some of them now considered historic, but still used for burials. Once more, the band would gather behind the hearse, and once more, the immediate family and closest friends would follow, and grieving and slow, they would make their way to the burial ground. We imagine now, as mourners of the past year, walking through the streets of the city, preparing to let go of the past. In our past, we have people we love who have died. We have missed opportunities, the mistakes and missteps we have made, the sad events we have lived through, the traumas we have survived, even the outright evil we have overcome and hope to leave behind. We are grieved, we are sad, we may even be angry, but we also recall to mind the heroes and heroines of the past year and all those who have gone before us, our ancestors, those related to us by blood, and those we have chosen for ourselves. whose shining example shows us the way. They shouldered burdens heavier than ours. They faced challenges we can only imagine. They endured hardships beyond what we could know. They prevailed and passed to us a legacy of courage and hope, examples of human life well lived. We remember them and we resolve to honor them by living lives that might serve as a model to those who come after us. With the support and strength of these ancestors, heroes, and heroines, and in the spirit of burying what we no longer need, getting rid of what holds us back, I invite you to get rid of your burdens from 2020. Rip up the paper you wrote on, maybe bury it, flush it down the toilet, throw it in the trash, whatever you need to do to let go of what you no longer need from 2020. And know that you are in the company of those who hold us in our mistakes and in our grief. When the funeral procession arrived at the gates of the cemetery, or nowadays when the hearse leaves to take the coffin to a distant suburban graveyard, then it is time for the ritual known in New Orleans as cutting the body loose. As the coffin is lowered into the grave or burial vault, the grand marshal of the brass band lifts his baton and gives the signal that the body has been dismissed. The band switches tempo, slow dirges become hot swinging dance numbers. What was slow and sad becomes happy and bright. The second line of mourners and well-wishers who up to this point have been marching in the funeral beat known as the slow drag suddenly break into clapping and dancing and singing along. They swing handkerchiefs and beautifully decorated parasols. They might have costumes with feathers and sequences. And as they leave the cemetery, the band plays songs such as "Feels So Good," "Be Glad When You're Dead, You Rascal You," "Didn't He Ramble," and of course, "The Saints." This gaiety and celebration is not a lack of respect for the dead or a denial of loss and pain. In the African culture's acceptance of the fullness of life, that life was full of sorrow and joy, pain and pleasure, was all an implicit acknowledgement that both were necessary, two parts of one whole. The dead are dead, and however much we grieve them, we cannot bring them back. But we are alive. And in that life lies joy and pleasure and hope for a better future. This is a deep wisdom that New Orleans have always known. But it's more than that. It's also a bold act of resistance. A friend of mine from Baton Rouge recently reminded me of this form of resistance. He said, "Do you know why Mardi Gras went on after Hurricane Katrina?" And he urged me to look it up, and I did. And there are pictures of people sitting on the steps of their boarded up houses with X's on their doors. They have come to New Orleans, back to home, back to their houses, which have been condemned because Mardi Gras is not some big party on the streets with loud music and floats and beads getting thrown. Mardi Gras is an act of resistance that says when you feel most down and out, you still have the capacity for life. Mardi Gras grounds us in the richness of our senses, the music, the bright colors, the dancing, the moving in our bodies. Mardi Gras reminds us that new life is breaking forth and that the X on the boarded door does not define us. Our theme for the month of January is imagination. So let's start that work now. As we set our intentions for the new year, invite you to imagine your most vibrant self. What would get you closer to being or feeling like your best, most whole, strongest self in this coming year? Is there a quality you want to cultivate? A joyful spirit, generosity, a peaceful spirit, tolerance, open heart, or maybe something more physical, a healthy body, or advancement toward a new job path, learning a new musical instrument or craft, volunteering in a community organization, or for an individual, maybe going minimalist. I invite you to write down what you might do to get there. Break it down into pieces. So if it's an open heart you want in the coming year, you might read books about love and vulnerability. You might do yoga poses that cultivate an open heart. You might talk with a counselor or practice compassionate listening. Or if it's a healthy body, you don't just say, I'm going to exercise more in 2021. You break it down, specific steps, sign up for something online or make a plan for post-pandemic in-person dance or exercise classes, whatever. Research healthy recipes, figure out what you're going to do, even while we are still socially isolated at home. Or if you want to be more generous in the coming year, what people and organizations will you support with your time and finances? How will you be generous in little ways, like at the grocery store or when you answer your phone? What do you wish to be in 2021? And how will you get there? Write it down, and write it down boldly and with intention.
I invite you now to help support the work of our congregation. There are several ways to give as posted on your screen. The first is to mail a check directly to our church with the Sunday offering written in the memo line. The second way is to give directly from our donation page with the link provided. The third way is to use the Give Plus app on your smartphone. Simply select First Unitarian Church and tap Give Now. Please join me in dedicating our offering. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
As we wind down this, our final worship service of 2020, this year of surprises and heartaches and blessings and joy, I'm going to be taking 6 weeks of leave starting January 1st to help reset after a hectic year and also work with my family to develop a more sustainable caregiving plan for family members who have experienced health crises in the last few months. I will miss you very much while I'm gone, but I look forward to returning refreshed and ready to imagine how to build upon our congregation's strength and also to reflect on any roadblocks that are getting in our way. This pandemic gives us a really awesome opportunity to imagine with a clearer lens our plans for the future, and I'm really excited to do that work. Now, while I'm away, Reverend Tracy Robinson Harris will be bringing her expertise and wisdom to First Unitarian by filling in various areas of ministry from afar. She will be supported as well by local ministers and lay leaders and staff here at First Unitarian. And I look forward to seeing you again in mid-February. Now, we lit our chalice for the spark of light that Peggy Rawheiser brought to our congregation and to those who knew her. And now we end our service by extinguishing our chalice, knowing that the light that was Peggy's life will glow on for her family and for those of us who knew her. Friends, the coming year is full of possibility. You are full of possibility. May the past stay in the past, and may the future find you living out all that is possible in your life. Go in peace, go in love, and go dancing.